It's like 5:30 in the morning right now. Eating my yogurt. I'm gonna head down for the bus for my 8:20 tea time. Thanks to Mr. James again, we will be having a recording for this entire all 3 days of this tournament. So I hope you guys stay tuned and let's get started. Welcome to day 1 of the Friends of TLPGA 2024. So welcome to hole 1, a par 4 playing 378, but it is definitely downhill as you can see from the details on the corner. That is a picture from our yardage book and it's playing about 20 yards downhill. So this was my first tee shot of the day and I did not hit a good shot. As you can see, my caddy is running to make sure that we are inbounds, but we ended up safe here. Our ball took a kick left because there's quite a severe slope down the right side, so we ended up just on the corner in the rough. So on this second shot, we had about 158 yards playing to a back pin. So I was hitting a 7-iron here from the rough. And I thought that the 7-iron would be fine. But as you can see, it carried to the center of the green and took a massive bounce. So the greens are playing pretty firm. From the back here, I was using a 58-degree wedge. I thought that the greens would be firmer, especially considering my second shot, but that definitely stopped quicker than I was expecting it to, giving myself this 6-footer downhill putt for par on the first hole. So the green speed this week is only 7.5, so it's definitely playing very slow. But as you can see, the greens look pretty decent, so it's quite difficult to convince yourself to putt, especially a downhill putt like this, firm. Because as you can tell, that went pretty short even for a downhill 6-foot putt. So it's definitely a mental challenge to be able to not look at the slope but just convince yourself that you're putting on a 7.5 speed green. So for this second hole, we have a 355 yard par 4, so a pretty short one over here after the first tee shot, just trying to make sure I hit this pretty solidly. And I hit it down the line that I wanted to. My caddy was a little bit afraid, but I thought that it would be fine based on where I hit it during the practice round. Unfortunately, I got actually a little bit blocked by these trees in front of me. As you can see, the pin is on the right side, so I had to carry these trees and I'm on a little bit of a downhill lie as well. I've got about 89 yards here, so I'm hitting my 58-degree wedge just to make sure I have enough to carry those trees. And I hit a really good shot from there. I was very happy that obviously I carried the trees, and you can see I landed it pretty well and left myself about another 6-footer here for birdie on the second. So a little bit of a knee shaker there, but we managed to get back to even par after the second hole, and we have a par 3 coming up next. It is playing 161 yards today. There's not too much wind this morning, so it's playing pretty still. So I'm hitting a 7-iron here. I was pretty much aiming for the center of the green on this one. As you can see, the pin is tucked left, so we don't want to be too aggressive on this one, especially since I play a draw. So for my putt, I had about a 24-foot putt coming back for birdie. So we didn't make that one, but I left myself with a bit of a tap-in par, so we will take that on this hole. And next up, we have hole 4, which is a par 4 uphill, but playing only 330 yards. It's about a 15-yard uphill hole, so we are hitting driver and just sending it as far as we can. After that, for my second shot, I had 117 yards playing 122 yards. So I'm hitting a pitching wedge here and trying to get this as close to the hole as I can. This is a pretty short hole, but for this green it's not too easy because it is elevated, so we need to make sure we have the right carry. And as you can tell, the greens are pretty firm as well. So just making sure that we carry it to the right spot is very important on this golf course. So after that, we gave ourselves another look for birdie. We had another 6-footer here, about a left to right putt for birdie. So a successful birdie on that hole, and we'll move on to the next hole, which is a par 5. So for this par 5, there is a water hazard down the left, and it's a pretty big dog leg left. So I am just hitting a 7 wood here to give myself a position on the fairway, because this is most likely not going to be a 2-shot hole. So just giving myself a good position. As you can see, this is the hazard that I was talking about on the left side, and there's a bunker down the right as well, which if I hit it too far, I'm going to reach. So that's the 7 wood. So for my second shot, again hitting a 7 wood, just giving myself a position where I can hit a full approach shot into this green. And after that, we left ourselves with 83 yards playing 85 yards. As you can see from the flag, the wind is definitely picking up a little bit. So I'm hitting a 58-degree wedge here and trying to basically just carry this pin high. And I can tell that the greens are going to be firm, but we can't be too cute with this, because if we don't carry it all the way to the green, we are definitely not going up. But if we carry it on the green, it gets pretty firm. So it's a bit of a balancing act here. But anyway, we gave ourselves this 27 feet putt for birdie and had a good look at it. Almost made it, honestly, just had a bit of a kind of lipped out a little bit. So gave myself this 2 feet tap in for par. So either way, we will take that par on this hole. And moving on to the next hole, where we have a par 3. This is a pretty difficult par 3. It's playing 183 yards, 180 with the slope, but there's not much landing area in front of where the pin position is today. So you kind of want to get it a little bit left of the pin, because there's a much wider green on the left side. I was hitting a 5-iron here. I ended up hitting it a bit more left than I would have liked it to be, but it is still on the green, which is definitely acceptable for this hole. So as you can see here, I gave myself a pretty long putt just on the edge of the green. I had 51 feet, so really just trying to make sure I get the right distance here. We know that it's playing slow. I thought I hit that pretty firm. It is a bit downhill, but just still did not have enough speed. So gave myself about a 3-footer left for par. And let me tell you what, when the greens are this slow, even the short putts, you have to be a bit cautious about it, because I feel like the difference is I'm not just stroking a 3-foot putt, like I have to hit a 3-foot putt. So yeah, it's definitely something that you have to be cautious about it. You have to be firm and just commit to it. So we successfully made a par there, which I'm happy about on that hole. Next up, we have a par 4 playing 348, but about 15 yards uphill. So again, this drive, I need to favor a bit of the right side because I can run out of fairway on the left side. So hit a good tee shot there, ended up leaving myself with 109 yards playing 114 yards with the slope. I decided to go with a half pitching wedge here, planning to land it about 110 yards, because that I felt like from the fairway this pitching wedge should be able to spin. But unfortunately, I don't really know how it went so far. It's probably just that the greens were firm and probably took a big bounce, but I ended up quite a bit over the pin. So I ended up having to chip here with a 58-degree wedge. You can see it's about a 15-yard chip, and left myself with about a 2-3-footer left for par. So managed to make that par and moved on to the next hole, which is a par 5. So this par 5 is not too long. It's playing 487 yards. It's again a bit elevated. There is a water hazard down the left side, so we kind of want to favor kind of towards where the person is standing. That's the ideal line. From there, you can kind of go for the green. It's about 260 from me from here, but it's a pretty narrow second shot, so I just decided to lay up to a spot where I'm going to be comfortable hitting a third shot in, because I didn't really want to leave myself with a 40-yard chip shot. So ended up leaving myself with 71 yards to today's pin, going with a 58-degree wedge here. So I was trying to aim this a little bit left of the pin, because I know that from the left side it's an easier putt. Hit it a little bit more left than I would have liked it to, but I left myself with about a 10-footer left for birdie on this hole. So successfully made that birdie there. So we move on to the last hole, which is hole 9, a par 4. It's playing 363 yards. Pretty straightforward. We're playing the green on the left side, so we basically just want to hit this anywhere down the fairway. If you hit it down the left side of the fairway, you have a little bit of a shorter approach shot. obviously because you're more hitting directly more towards the pin. So I hit a good shot there, gave myself a shot from the fairway, left myself with 94 yards playing 97 with the slope. So I was hitting a 54-degree wedge here. So not too bad of a shot, left myself with about a 15-footer. There wasn't much space on the right side of the pin, so I went towards the left of the pin, which is why I ended up with a bit of a longer putt than I was expecting to have. So for this putt, I hit a good putt, it just didn't break like I was expecting it to. So left myself with a tap in on the last hole to finish the front 9 at 2 under par 34. So let's get started on the back 9. We are starting with a par 5 playing 525 yards. So for me, if I hit towards the left side of this fairway, I'm going to run out of fairway and run into those bunkers. So I kind of need to hit towards the right side of this fairway. It looks like there's a lot more room from this camera angle, but it's actually quite a narrow tee shot. So I was happy that I hit that well and down the center of the fairway. So after that, I decided to just lay up with a hybrid to give myself a good spot again to approach this green, because if not, I would leave myself with another awkward like 40-yard chip shot, which is just not my favorite chip shot, as I think you can tell based on what I've been saying on my par 5s. So left myself with 82 yards here, so pretty good distance for me. Just going with a 58-degree wedge here and trying to be aggressive with this pin, but also trying to make sure that I hit it a little bit clippy so that it doesn't get that firm bounce that these greens have been giving. But it ended up back spinning, which I was not expecting it to do. But I still left myself with about a 15-footer on the first hole for birdie. So I thought I would putt that a bit harder because of how slow the greens have been, and it just ended up being a bit too hard. Left myself with about a 5-footer left for par here, so not an easy par, but happy that I made it, so a good save there. Moving on to the next hole, which is this par 3. So this is a beautiful par 3. As you can see, it is playing 154 yards today, 151 with the slope. I'm just going with a 7-iron. The wind is pushing everything a bit left, so the pin is stuck left, just going for the center of the green here. So left myself on the center of the green, like I said, so had about a 24-foot putt left for birdie. Not the easiest putt, but just trying to get the speed right here. As we can tell, the speed is pretty important. Hit a good putt, but it just kind of didn't have enough speed to hold the line, so it broke off at the end. But a tap in par here. So next up, we have the longest par 4 on this golf course. It's 410 yards, playing a little bit into the wind. So just trying to hit this as far as I possibly can out there and try to give myself as short of an iron as I can. It's also not an easy approach shot as well. For the tee shot, hit a pretty good shot, definitely happy with where I ended up. So left myself 147 yards into this green, so I was going with an 8-iron here. Pin was on the right side, and I think I ended up just giving it too much credit, and I didn't want to play it towards the smaller side of the green, so I ended up pulling a little bit, so gave myself a much longer putt than I wanted to have. I had 48 feet here, so across this green, I thought I putted that pretty firm, but it still did not get there. Left myself with about a 5-footer left for pars. So again, a pretty difficult putt, especially on this green, so just trying to hit a good solid putt here. Luckily for us, it was a good putt and it went in, so we managed to save the par on that. So we move on to the next hole. So next hole again is a pretty longish par 4. It's 395 yards, and it's a pretty tricky tee shot because the target is actually over the trees on the left side, but obviously, as you can tell, it doesn't look very welcoming on the left side, and there is an OB on the left side as well. And you can clearly see that I was not aiming towards the left side. I think I basically aimed it exactly where I hit it. So not surprisingly, it went down the right side of the fairway. I didn't think it would be that bad, but it ran out into a pretty bad spot. So I was stuck behind this. I had no choice. I had to take a drop, and then there was a bunch of tree roots. So I was just trying to make sure that I hit this out into a clear spot, making sure that I still give myself a look for the green on the third shot. I still had about 116 yards. So going with a pitching wedge here and just trying to hit this on the green. So hit a decent shot, left myself with a 9-footer left for par, and really can't complain as long as we still give ourselves a par putt after we have to chip out. That's a good sign. So this was my 9-footer putt, and I hit a good putt and managed to save that par on that hole. So definitely a very good par there. So next up we have hole 14, playing 368 yards. So the wind on this hole is always pushing towards the right, which makes it a bit tricky. We still want to favor the left side. There's OB left and right, so either way, because it is quite an elevated fairway, so we do want to make sure that we favor the left side because of how elevated it is. The wind does affect it quite a bit. So I ended up hitting a good shot there, left myself with 121 yards, playing 125 yards. Again, you can see another elevated green, so distance control is very important on this golf course because you have to carry it on the green, but also it's playing very firm. So hit a pitching wedge here. You can see left side of the pin. It was an okay shot. Not super happy about it because I didn't make the best contact, so it didn't get all the way up the slope. So I left myself with a bit of a longer putt, had about 24 feet here, but I hit a good stroke there. I think if it's past the pin, it was a good chance, so just gave myself a 1-footer tap-in putt for par on this hole, which again, par on this course is good, so we will take a par on any hole. So we have reached hole 15, which is a par 3, playing 145 yards. So it was 133 to the front. I'm just hitting an 8-iron here. Pin is tucked left. The wind kind of feels like it's helping a little bit, pushing a little bit off to the right. I hit an okay shot. It was not the best, a little bit too far right. So I ended up leaving myself with about a 30-foot putt here. You can see it's a little bit confusing because it looks like it's a bit downhill, but it's actually playing a bit uphill and into the green. So I tried to putt that pretty firm, but I still left it quite substantially short, as you can see. Left myself with another 5-foot putt here, so definitely leaving myself with way too many mid-distance par putts on this 9. But luckily have been putting them well, managed to make that as well. So saved another par there, and moving on to hole 16, which as you can see is a short par 4, playing 298. I'm going with a 3-wood here. It's a pretty much a 90-degree dogleg right, so I have to cut a bunch of trees, and as long as you carry those trees, you're going to be in a completely fine, good spot. So I ended up leaving myself with about 70 yards to this pin, so going for a 58-degree wedge. Thought I hit it decent, but with how strong the wind was blowing, helping it, I think it just took another firm bounce and ended up over the pin. Left myself with this chip. Really wanted to make that, but just had the wrong line, so not too bad. Gave ourselves a tap-in par, but we definitely was wanting to at least try to give ourselves a putt for birdie on that hole if a short approach shot in. But anyway, we move on to hole 17, which is a par 4. This is a pretty tricky par 4, so it's pretty long. It's playing 380, but it's always like straight into the wind, and it's a bit of a dogleg as well, so it's probably playing closer to 400. I ended up hitting a bit too far right, so I ended up being in a not the best lie. The ball was sitting pretty far in, and there's a water hazard to carry in front as well. As you can see, you can't even see the ball. So I was kind of deciding whether I should try to carry the water hazard, but because of how heavy the rough was, it's pretty much cow grass over here. And I feel like even if I hit a 7-iron, if that rough with the lie does not like hit it perfect, it's probably not gonna have enough carry to carry that hazard. So I decided to just play it safe and go towards the left side where the hazard is not gonna come into play at all. I know that this means that I'm gonna leave myself with an awkward shot into the green, but it's better than bringing the water hazard into play. So over here I was left about 44 yards, so I hit a pretty decent chip, I thought, but then it just took a big bounce right. So ended up with a 15-foot putt left here for par. So definitely not as close as we wanted to be, but kind of got into a little bit of trouble of the tee, so can't really be too upset about that. Cut it short again, so not ideal, but we made the 3-footer coming back for bogey, so we move on to the last hole, which is a par 5. So on this par 5, it is playing 515 yards, so it's a tricky par 5 because it is pretty windy usually, and there is a bunch of water hazards that are in place, so you just kind of want to hit it somewhere down the fairway to see what your chances are. I ended up carrying it quite a bit further than I was expecting to, so I ended up almost running out of fairway. Luckily I didn't, but I ended up behind this tree here, so just hitting a 9-iron for my second shot to lay up to a good position to approach this green. It's not going to be too far anyway, so I ended up with 84 yards into this green and hitting a 58-degree wedge here. So hit a pretty good shot, definitely happy with that. Left myself with about a 4-footer left for birdie on the last hole, and this was the putt to try to get to 2 under par for the day. So unfortunately it kind of like lipped the hole, and I don't know how come it just had a weird break. Maybe it hit something, I'm not sure. But that concludes round 1, where we finished 71 for the day. So not too bad of a round, and that's the end of day 1 of the Friends of TLPGA. Come back for day 2.